Hi everyone, I'm Morgan. Sorry if I look off to the side or if I start to fumble. I have my notes off to the side and I'm trying to scroll down. I have them on the other side of the screen, and I also hate recording myself. So let's just get through this. The book that I read recently that I chose for the narration and point of view assignment was Flipped by Wendelin von Drain. This book is about a school-age love story with a girl and her next-door neighbor, and the book goes through their lives through elementary school to junior high, and we see the events that take place, and we get to see how their feelings escalate and de-escalate for one another. The narrator is actually two narrators. It's the two main characters, Bryce and Julie, and the narrators are honest and yet they're not. And what I mean by this is that from what we see as the reader, we are almost in Bryce and Julie's subconscious, and we almost are seeing their feelings and thoughts go through. But that doesn't mean that they always tell the truth in the story. They can still lie, and sometimes they do. Bryce fibs a lot in the book. So from a storyteller standpoint, Bryce and Julie are honest, almost because they have to be, because we're in their thoughts with them. But from a character standpoint, no, they're not always honest and reliable. The point of view is first person point of view for each narrator. And what I like about this book is that we almost get two books in one. We get to see how Bryce feels about one thing, and then the next chapter will be through Julie's point of view, and we get to see how she feels about it. So she's telling her story, and he's telling his story. And it's almost suspenseful in a way, because when one person's telling the story, we don't know how the other person feels until we get to their chapter. How this would influence how having a different narrator or a different point of view would influence the story is I have a couple of instances here. The first one is Shelley Stahl's. On page 7, we read about how in the beginning, Bryce does not like Julie. He does not like her at all. He thinks that she's weird and that she's infatuated with him, which is kind of true. And so he comes up with the idea to date this girl, Shelley Stahl's, because he knows that Julie and her do not get along. And on page 7, he says, I know that Julie hates Shelley, even though I don't know why. So we can see that he's doing this just to get her off his back. But then on page 15, we read that Julie says that she is two-faced and that she doesn't want someone like Bryce to be with someone like Shelley. And it's really interesting to see how Julie is almost doing it from a noble standpoint, but Bryce is doing it from an irritated standpoint. The second instance is the sycamore tree. On page 38 and 41, we read how Julie finds this place at their bus stop with a sycamore tree, where she climbs up the tree and she can see the whole town. It's a beautiful it's a beautiful view, and she wants everyone to come up, not just Bryce. She just wants them to see how nice of a view it is. And then the owner of the tree decides he wants to tear it down. And so she says for everyone at the bus stop to climb up the tree, because they can't take us all if we're all up here. They can't take the tree if we're all up here. But from Bryce's standpoint, he just thinks that this is just another one of her ploys, so to speak, to get close to him, because she is really head over heels with him. And so for a minute, he almost feels sorry for her, but then he outweighs it by saying, oh, he's going to get in trouble if he doesn't go to school. And the third instance I have is the Basket Boys auction, and this is when we start to see when things flip, and this is when Bryce starts to like Julie back. On page 176, we see that Bryce, from Bryce's standpoint, he sees Julie bidding on a guy, and his thoughts start racing, like, oh, does he like her? I'm so confused. Does she like John? This is so confusing. Why does she want to bid on him? Why wouldn't she bid on me? And he starts to get jealous. But from Julie's standpoint, on page 201, we see that Julie bids on this boy John because nobody else is bidding on him, because he's quiet, he's reserved, and he's a little bit of a nerd. So she feels bad for him, because she knows what it's like when people find you as an outcast. So she bids on him, and she actually has her friend try to outbid her so that he doesn't feel embarrassed and that he feels good. And then the last instance I have is after they have the auction, Bryce sees John and Julie eating together, and he starts getting jealous of him, on page 180 and 182. And there's a line where he says, what was she laughing about? How could she sit there and laugh and look so beautiful? And then from Julie's point of view, on page 201 and 203, we see that Bryce confronts her and asks her, do you like John? And she gets embarrassed. She's really upset by the way Bryce is behaving, and she gets really mad at him. And I won't spoil it for you, that for those of you who haven't read it, but it's a total flip. We see that Bryce starts to like her, and Julie is not really having it. So that's my assignment, and thank you for watching.